welcome everyone over here. What a great big crowd. And we'll go ahead and get started. You know, and I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here. This is it's a great occasion for governing the good earth of the 200-year centennial of Terrebonne Parish. With that, I would like to call up Father Cody Chanier St. Anne Berg for the invocation. Father.
They said they wanted a quick blessing, and they said, oh, I know the priest to call. My brothers and sisters, as we open this meeting in prayer, let us lift up the Haydell family, especially Mr. Jerry Haydell, as he has passed away, and ask God to repose his soul into heavenly kingdom. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord God, you have set people to rule over your people, to judge fairly. Our human law is, when it is right, it is a reflection of your divine law. As you have appointed judges over the Israelites, have you appointed kings and servants to continue to lead your people. We ask that you continue to send your blessings upon us, continue to provide trustworthy, righteous people to lead our communities here, to judge our cases, to continue to practice the law which you have given us that reflects what your will is, Lord. We ask your blessings on all of the faithful departed, especially Jerry Haydell, who has passed away. May they continue to be shepherded to your heavenly kingdom, where we hope one day to be gathered together again. And we ask all these prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father. In the Pledge of Allegiance, we ask Chief Justice John Weimer to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Judge?
Thank you, Mr. President. Although I am not from Terrebonne Parish, I wish I was, but I have served this area for many years on the court, and it's a great honor to be here. I also married Gordy's daughter, but not to me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Father-in-law.
Whenever he says he married my daughter, everyone stops and looks. I said, he presided over it, okay? you know, before we get started with everything, it gives me great privilege to, we're going to award a proclamation, commendation to Vanessa Guidry Whipple tonight. She is served on the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and then but before we give everything, we're going to ask Judge Weimer to say a few words, and we're going to ask Judge Boris Lottinger to come read the commendation. And I've known Vanessa in a past, her husband who passed away, Keith Whipple, dear friends of my family, my father, and it's with great honor that we're going to give, we're going to a key to the city along with a commendation from the great people of the Terrebonne Parish. So, Judge?
Thank you, not father-in-law. Judge Whipple, this is a very richly deserved honor at this time in your career. I was very disappointed in you recently when you announced that you were going to retire, because she has served this well and our system of justice so well for so many years. She became the first female elected to the First Circuit Court of Appeal, and in doing so, she had to run against an incumbent who was a male, and won handily, and then began a long and storied service. She served on the Louisiana Judiciary Commission, and generally speaking, people that serve on that commission are the best and the brightest that we can find to do so. Because of her lengthy tenure on the Court of Appeal, she became the chief judge. And then she began learning what it's like to herd cats. She has all the responsibility, but none of the authority over her colleagues. But she led them well, and she and I have interacted for many years. As a matter of fact, without her, I would not be here in all likelihood. She was going to run for the Supreme Court and probably, in retrospect, would have won. However, unfortunately, she had some health issues that prevented her from running, and I stepped in and ran, not in her place, but ran and was fortunate enough to be elected. And now, after all these years that I'm the Chief Justice, she calls me boss. But boss spelled backwards is double S-O-B. She calls me that too. Because I'm what you call frugal. I am very honored to have served with you on the Court of Appeal for, I think I was there for 15 or 20 minutes before I became became a justice on the Supreme Court. And I really want to, again, commend you and thank you for your many years of dedicated service. She actually started when she was, I think, 18 or 19, if I'm not mistaken, on the Court of Appeal, and she still looks very young. She has decided to retire. She has grandchildren that want a lot of her attention and need her, and she needs them too. So, Judge, Chief, would you come up? And Chief Judge Lottinger is also here, I think, to read the proclamation. Judge Lottinger was also the Chief Judge of the First Circuit Court of Appeal, and he also has a very long and storied career of service in the judiciary. He was in the legislature when I was 18. He was a very, very young man. We were about the... Yeah, I was 18, Judge, for like a moment or two, but that was long ago. We're not going to get into age, are we? But he also became the Chief Judge of the First Circuit Court of Appeal. We did not serve together on that level, but he did grade my papers, and one time he didn't give me a very good grade. And I was looking for the opportunity to pay him back for that, but unfortunately he left the Court of Appeal before I had a chance to do so. Judge Lottinger, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chief. This proclamation reads as follows. A commendation. Whereas Judge Vanessa Guidry Whipple is a Berg native and lifelong resident of Terrebonne Parish. She graduated from Terrebonne High School and received her undergraduate degree from the University of Southwestern Louisiana and her Juris Doctorate degree from Loyola Law School in 1980. And whereas Judge Guidry Whipple was married to the late Keith Whipple and is the proud parent of Dr. Christopher Whipple, and whereas her judicial career began in 1990 when she was elected as the first female judge from Terrebonne Parish, as well as the first female to serve on the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and whereas she continued to make history when in 2013 she became the first female chief judge in history of the First Circuit Court of Appeal, and whereas prior to becoming chief judge, she served as an ad hoc justice on the Louisiana Supreme Court during her first term, where she became the authoring judge during her service, and whereas she's one of the few judges to have served as the appellate judge on the Louisiana Judiciary Commission for 2 4-year terms, and whereas she was elected to 3 unopposed terms on the First Circuit Court of Appeal and will retire in December 2022 with 32 years of service. And whereas during Judge Guidry Whipple's service on the First Circuit Court of Appeal, she has written over 1,000 legal opinions and participated in several thousand cases in the court. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the parish president, Rodney Dove, and the entire Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government, the extraordinary service of the Honorable Vanessa Guidry Whipple be recognized, to thank her for unwavering years of service to the citizens not only Terrebonne Parish, but those of the First Circuit Court of Appeals. She is hereby publicly acknowledged and presented this honorary key to the city of Houma, Parish of Terrebonne, recognized of her dedication and service. Signed, Gardney Dove, Parish President, and Vanessa. The key is under the glass. Don't break the glass.
Wow. I'm used to speaking in public, but I'm not used to speaking in public and hearing people speaking about myself other than the words, my children in the law, which are the words that I've written in my career. I'm so grateful for this, and I'm just so taken aback. I didn't realize they were doing this, but I do want to say one thing. In 1990, on October 6, 1990, I was elected to my first term. And the way that I was elected to my first term is because people in this parish took a chance on a young lawyer who wanted to make a few changes in the way things were done. And you sent me to Baton Rouge. I promised that I would work hard, and I hope that I have fulfilled that promise. I try to treat people fairly in my court, and I'm proud of the people that I've worked with. And many of them have passed away. I'm the only judge still on my court from when I started, which is why I'm the chief. That's just a fancy way of saying I'm an old broad on the court. I've had a wonderful life in public service, but the most gratifying thing for me is when I run into someone at the grocery store or at Dillard's or just going out for a hamburger with my grandkids, and they say, I read what you did, and it really made a difference in my life for what you did in this case. We all want to have a fair shake in life, and I'm proud of the fact that in Louisiana, the people decide who are going to be the judges, and the people decide how long you can be a judge. And I'm eternally grateful for all of you and all the people in the 8 parishes that I run in for giving me the opportunity to serve 31 years. Honest to goodness, when my husband and Mr. Joe Waite Sr. talked me into running, I said, come on now, nobody would elect someone as young as I am, but you did, and I appreciate it so much. I miss my husband, I won't kid you for that. He taught me how to be a lawyer, and he taught me how to have respect for the process and to take pride in the work that you do. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to him and my family. And I will say this, my staff is here tonight. I don't know if they knew about this, but they certainly didn't tell me. So I'm going to tell you, these, ladies and gentlemen, are the unsung heroes of what I do. Would you please stand up? Judy has been my secretary for 42 years. Dana's been with me 31. And Julie has been with me, I think, 23 years. I couldn't do what I do without them. And Judge Lottinger, when I got elected, he came over and he showed me this is how we do it. And it was very encouraging, and I'm grateful for that. I live a life rich in abundance, and I am just eternally grateful for all of you and the faith that you placed in me. And I look forward to hopefully having some more younger people take up the mantle. We've got lots of work to do in Baton Rouge. And may I say one last thing about the Chief Justice who's here tonight. He says he's frugal. I'm frugal too. When I started on the court, we had when I became chief, I'm talking about, because of all the budget cuts, we had about 3 weeks of reserves. Now, at this time, when I'm leaving the court, we have about 3 months in reserves so that we can withstand some of the pressures of the budget crises that we've had to deal with in the legislature. And I don't want to go down in history as the judge who had to shut the doors of the court and furlough things. And I'm grateful to be leaving knowing that I never had to do that. Thank you so much. I'm eternally grateful for this.
And a special shout out to Debbie Artigo, who really put this together, able to get the information, and thanks to everyone who helped to put it together. But thank you very much, Debbie, because without her, this event wouldn't be going on. And so I'm going to go ahead and announce the elected officials here. And if we don't have your name, there's a lot of them, so please let me know. But I think we have everything. Judge Matt Hagan, of course, Judge Vanessa Guidry Whipple, Senator Mike Vesey, Judge Lottinger, Constable David LaBeouf, Judge Jude Fungi, Chief Justice John Weimer, who is not my father-in-law or son-in-law. Son-in-law, right? Son-in-law. Judge Juan Pickett, Judge David Arsenault, Judge Stanwood Duval, Representative and Speaker Pro Temp of the House of Representatives, Tanner McGee, Tony Alford, Levy Board President, Christian Bergeron, with Congressman Graves, Hunt Downer, Reggie Dupre, Michelle Claudet, Damon Baldone, and Darren Guidry, who is the council chairman, Dirk Guidry on the council. Is there any other council members that's here? Also, Judge Timmy Ellender, thank you for coming. And did we skip anyone, please? If we do, we apologize. Right quick, I'd like to name, Edwards Edwards Bubby Lyons family. We have Tommy Lyons, Leslie Lyons, Jeff Lyons, David Lyons, Kathy Lyons, Thibodeau, that's the brother Jerry Lyons, Laura Four, and great-grandchildren, Andrew, Jacob, and Adele. Bubby passed away, and they listed his family here. It was nice to see the family, and Bubby was great. In fact, we're naming the courthouse square after Bubby Lyons. We're going to have a ceremony. We're doing a bronze plaque, and it's fitting. He was from the police juror to mayor to the first parish president. So you see that coming along. Senator Alan Ellender, we have a lot of relatives of his here. Gerald Ellender, William Ellender, Maria Florick, Charlie Ellender, David Ellender, Mary Allison, Jules Ellender, Susan, Carmen Waits with David, Frank Ellender with Sandy, and Elwood Ellender with Margaret, and great-grandchildren, Brian Waits, Jacob Waits, Josh Ellender, Shauna Ellender, Jessica Ellender, and Sarah Brasher. And I believe that's it. Thank y'all so much for coming. And it's so great to see the family of the people and the people that ran Terrebonne Parish long before I became elected. And Boris Lottinger to come here. He was in the house before myself, Hunt Downer, actually, which I took his place, and then Jerome Zarang took my seat, and then Reggie Dupre was a senator. And I mean, what's represented in here today is the people that made Terrebonne move forward. In a round of applause for everyone in here, if you don't mind, a round of applause. And one last person on here is our parish attorney, Jules Hebert. I'd be remiss if I didn't announce Jules over there. And we just lost Dr. Jerry Haydell, and God bless him and his family and all what they're going through. I know everyone in this room knows Jerry, and he's going to be sorely missed. So with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to remarks by House of Representatives. Clay is here. Honorable Clay Shea Snyder, Speaker of the House. I didn't see him come in here. I served with him for 8 years, and it's an honor for him to be here, the Speaker of the House. We accomplished a lot together, and they're still accomplishing. And it's Clay, thanks to Clay and our state delegation, all the way back to when Clay started, he was always behind us with money-wise in Morganza to the Gulf and all our projects. Terrebonne's received over $1.4 billion and Clay was a part of it, and he's still a part of it as Speaker of the House. So with that, Louisiana Speaker of the House, Clay Shake-Snyder.
Thank you, Chairman, or I'll say Parish President now. You know, a while ago when Gordy was up here and he asked for an applause and nobody applauded, he had to ask again. It reminded me of when we was in committee and I served as just a committee member. You know, Gordy would get up there and when there was one of them tough votes and we didn't know how many votes we had, Gordy would say, "I'm voting yes. I'm voting yes." I'm voting yes too. But look, it's a privilege to be here tonight, and I can tell you that, you know, it feels like when I come down here, it feels like I'm coming home. As much time as I've spent down here and the people that I've met and had chances to visit with and do things. But, you know, when I got asked to come and bring a resolution about the 200th celebration of Terrebonne, it was an honor. And you start thinking about just the parish itself, right? What makes the parish great? It's the people. And I think Gordy hit on some of those things. And, you know, I went to looking a little bit about the history, and I pride myself on knowing a little bit about the history. And we forget about how much of it we forget. And I say that in the fact that, you know, growing up in Louisiana and seeing the things in the political realm that we all do, the new generation nowadays doesn't quite remember the past. They don't remember those people who've laid the groundwork. And we have a lot of that here. And I'll tell you a quick story about my next door neighbor who was Edwin Edwards at the time. And whether you loved him or you hated him, he truly did love Louisiana. And he would call me after he got back from his long vacation that he took there for a while. He said, "I would love to, I have a place I want to go and we're going to go eat some boiled crabs." I said, "Let's go." Usually he'd call me and I would drive him because he didn't care to drive, but he showed up early that day and he said, "Look, I'm going to drive if you don't mind." "Yeah, Governor, fine." Well, the governor's problem driving was, it wasn't that he couldn't see and it wasn't that he wasn't a great driver. He just didn't know what the speed limit was most of the time. You know, he'd get on the interstate and do 45, and he'd get in the small towns and do 85, and then he'd speed up and slow down, speed up. Well, we get to our little small town where we're going, and we're just getting in there, and I said, "Governor, you might want to slow down a little bit. I think it's 45 miles an hour here." "Oh, we're good." We clocking along by that time. Blue lights get up behind us. Pulls us over. Young deputy gets out, big chest. You could tell he was he was all into his job, and he come up there and he tapped on the window and said, "License, registration, please." And I done pulled all out the insurance out of the glove box and handed it to him. He walks back to the car and Edwin says, "You know," he says, "I've never gotten a speeding ticket in my life." I said, "Well, Governor, today might be your day. That's all I'm going to tell you." He said, "Man, he's back there a long time. You think that's what's happening?" I said, "Well, usually when they back there a little while, they writing a ticket out for you. You're going to have to put your autograph on that thing." So the young guy, after about 5 minutes, he comes back. We roll down the window. He hands us the driver's registration, and he says, "Governor Edwards, I just want you to know that my chief of police said there is no way you were speeding in this town." That being said, that young man had no clue who Edwin was when he rolled that window down. And we forget about those things. We forget about the things that he done. And today it's the young people that you know, they want to do the right things, but they forget about the past. And looking here, you know, I was looking up a few things, and Terrebonne means good earth. It should have been good people, right? You look back over the Capitol and the things that happened up there and all the people that we had up there. And, you know, you have to start with speakers of the House. And come to find out that this parish has more speakers of the House than any other parish in the state in Baton Rouge. Had a total of 4. That's not counting speaker pro tems, and that's not counting chairmen and those types, because it's an endless number. And I can tell you it's a huge advantage in Baton Rouge when you have people who are from an area, whether it's this parish or the next parish, but they're in like-minded ways. They're part of a process that wants to make things better for the state, but better for the parish as a whole. And you look at, and I'll go through a few of them. My staff wrote a whole lot of information down that I'm really, it's really hard to believe that these guys were up there doing all of these great things, and their names are still mentioned in the halls up there. You look at former Speaker Hunt Downer, who, if you read the papers this year, you'll probably see that, and if you know the history, when he was up there, he wanted to preserve the Capitol and make sure the historical side of it was put together and that it was well kept, and that people from our young people could go there and learn the history of the Capitol. And he did a great job. He brought technology in. He did a tremendous job at being speaker and doing those things. I tried to do that this year, and me and the governor didn't see eye to eye on it, so it didn't work out very well. But Speaker Lottinger, that those people who came in there, the Eleanor Room, one of the most popular rooms that we have at the Capitol, is named after a speaker from here. We had a meeting in there today. As a matter of fact, the Republican delegation had a meeting. Those things like that. And then there was Duncan Cage that was there from, 1865 to 1897? That's about your year, right? But you look at all of those people, and you look at the things that they've done back in the day, and you look at, and we'll even go as far as looking on the other side at them Chabert boys. I don't know if y'all know any Chaberts around here, but man, the history of those guys being there and the things that they were able to accomplish, just political heavyweights in Baton Rouge being able to represent a parish like this that comes here and represents people like each of you. And then there's, of course, Tanner McGee. I can tell you, if you haven't heard the story about how I became speaker and the legislature taking their independence back, it started with the class that Tanner came in on. And Tanner was very vocal about it when he first came in, and it was a huge shift in gears. We went from third gear to fourth gear really quick, and Tanner was a huge push in that direction. And then when my speaker's race came up this year, I couldn't have asked for a better friend, a better colleague, and somebody who is willing to go into the trenches with me and fight for the right things for our people. And when you see somebody like that, that's very rare. But it seems that y'all have them down here, or y'all have some good water down here that's making up for it. But Tanner comes in, and Tanner basically comes in as my right-hand guy. And I always tell people, Tanner was the guy that just kept me out of trouble. Tanner would come in and say, no, we don't quite need to do it that way. That's more like a bull in the china cabinet. And that's the way I approach things. But Tanner came in, and a lot of successful things that we've done, tort reform, tax reform, this year manufacturing reform, and to make sure that we get more businesses back here. Tanner was instrumental on that, all of that. And, of course, the number one thing that everybody should be proud of is the fact that he was able to, in a time of need, be able to bring resources down here along with everybody else who put forth effort. But he was able to reach out and have people bring resources down here, and then to go back to Baton Rouge and be able to bring the money back home along with the rest of the delegation up here. So I am honored to be here for this celebration, Mr. President, and we have a resolution from the Capitol that commemorates that. And we'd hope that you would be able to display this in the honor of the parish and everybody here for the people. So thank you, sir.
I'd be in. Thank you. Thank you for coming. On behalf of the people of Terrebonne Parish, thank you very much, Speaker Shake Snyder, and keep the money coming.
Absolutely. One more thing I heard Judge Weimer talk about herding cats. And if Judge Whipple ever decides she doesn't want to, she misses herding cats, she can come to Baton Rouge and herd cats with me up there. So.
And thank you very much, Speaker. The next one is Honorable Tanner McGee, Speaker Pro Temp of the House of Representatives. It's been my honor and pleasure to work with him as Parish President. And this guy, Jerome Zarang, Brett Lang, Mike Feasey, and have brought back a lot of money to Terrebonne Parish, led by these guys. And it's one thing to go to Baton Rouge and vote what you feel to vote for, but a big key is to bring the money back. And this guy's brought money back. Like I said, him, Jerome Zarang, Mike Feasey. I want to make sure I don't forget it. Brett Lane, I'm sorry, and then Beryl Amity. But my honor to present Honorable Tanner McGee.
Thank you. I really wasn't anticipating everybody saying such nice things about me. I thought I was just introducing Reggie and say nice things about Reggie, Hunt, and Judge Fungi. But before I do that, I'll be remiss if I didn't tell Judge Whipple that you said earlier you're not sure if you fulfilled your campaign promise. I can tell you on behalf of everybody, you definitely did that and more, blazing a trail for every would-be lawyer and especially every would-be female lawyer. And I think we can't appreciate it enough what you've done for everybody. You're very welcome. And according to my mom, you were a great kid to babysit as well. And additionally, you heard Speaker Shakespeare talk about the amount of people who have come from Terrebonne Parish have been successful. He is completely right. The Ellender Room is the room in the Capitol, and it's named after Alan Ellender. And so all these people in Houma still loom large at Baton Rouge. But I would say, and I do mean this, and I'm not saying it just because he's here or just because we've become such good friends or work so closely, Speaker Shake Snyder could be considered the 5th Terrebonne Parish Speaker for all that he has done for Terrebonne Parish. And I don't mean that just amount of money that's come from Baton Rouge in the last year. I will tell you, he called me every morning in the wake of Hurricane Ida and asked me what we needed. And it was something as simple as the food bank needs a refrigerated truck. There'll be a refrigerated truck tomorrow, a refrigerated truck show up next day at the food bank. You have no idea how much he came and delivered every single request that was asked of us. It was unreal. And it wasn't just, he won't tell you this, it wasn't just public resources. He paid for some of it himself. And I know that he does not want y'all to know that. He used campaign funds. He did a lot of things that just to make sure that we were okay. He also organized every legislator to meet every morning in Baton Rouge to get certain functions, generators, water, food, and they would meet in Baton Rouge and they would run supply lines back down to Terrebonne Parish. It really wasn't, it was necessary for us, but it wasn't necessary for you, and I think the people here should know everything you did. He came, did a ground tour of Terrebonne Parish. I remember before he came, he said, yeah, everybody's suffering. I said, but just wait. And we drove down to Chauvin all the way down to Cocodrie, and he said, oh my God, we are not doing enough. And it changed everything, and he was 100% on it. So before I interrupt the introductions, I do want everybody to know how much you did for this parish and how much it meant to me privately. And then in the aftermath, we got a lot of money. And he was part of it. He never told me no. He even set aside $20 million. People don't even know about that. We just put $20 million aside in a pot for grants for Gordy to make applications for Ida recovery for this parish. There's so many things he did. I could probably spend all night talking about it, but that's not why we're here. We're here to introduce these 3 gentlemen over there. And Reggie called me and said, do you need bios? I said, Reggie, I really don't think I need one. And he said, well, I'm going to give you one anyway. And what I think you should know about it is, which I thought was hilarious, Reggie's bio takes up an entire page, and everybody else's takes up half a page. And if you know Reggie, that makes perfect sense, right? But Reggie has represented this parish from forever, and I think one of the things about Reggie that I don't think gets said enough, and when I really think about it, it just impresses me more, is he's a native of Pointe-aux-Chenes, Louisiana. And somebody growing up in that sort of level of ruralness and everything that Pointe-aux-Chenes represents, and I love Pointe-aux-Chenes to death, it's my favorite part of my district, but to rise to a state senator from Pointe-aux-Chenes, is no small feat, and I think everybody should be commended to that. He served in the House of Representatives. He served in the Senate. He was 21 years of elected official, and now he's been the executive director of the Terrebonne Levee and Conservation District. But he did so much more than that. He was a floor leader under Foster and Blanco. He worked on coastals with Jindal. We wouldn't have CPRA without Reggie Dupre. You cannot say enough things about how much this man has meant for our parish, how instrumental he has been on coastal issues. I feel like my introduction will just not even do him full justice. To do him full justice, you need to sit in his office for 3 hours and let him tell you all about it, and you will definitely learn about it. But it's not in his bio, and I'm gonna tell you this, he was a police officer. He did so many things if you sit down and talk to him. And all that in this bio is not enough. I'll tell you what my favorite thing about him is. He is the smartest political mind of everybody you will ever talk to. You could be in a photo shoot, and he would say, yeah, but that's not a good shot. You need to get the oil rig behind you. And you're just thinking about, giving out food baskets to people who need it. He's like, yeah, you need to get the food basket out in front of the cop car with the American flag. And that's Reggie's true genius's mind. It never stops. It's quick. And so you can imagine he went to law school. And he's done everything you can. And I know that he's also most proud of his wife, Yvonne, his 3 children and 6 grandchildren. I can't say enough good things about Reggie Dupre, and I'm honored to have served in the same House of Representatives seat that he once occupied. The next person I'm called to introduce is Hunt Downer. I can tell you that I've known Hunt a really long time. Longer than probably anybody else in politics that I know. My best friend and roommate is his nephew. He was sort of like a legend to us. He was somebody that we aspired to. He was also the grumpy old man at Christmas. And, we looked up to him in a way that I can't imagine. He served 7 terms, back when you could do that sort of thing, served 28 years. He has stories about the Capitol that go on for days. He knows everything pretty much from 1976 on, and I think one of the things that somebody touched upon, but it wasn't told enough, the Capitol would not be what it is today. And I'm talking about the actual building itself if it would not be for Hunt Downer. There's no man who gave more to the Capitol building itself, restoring it, making sure it, upgrading the technology, making it being a functional building for us to serve than Hunt Downer. And I don't think it's even discussed enough about what he did in his term as speaker about turning around the building and stuff. If you look at a picture before and after Hunt Downer was there, it's actually simply amazing. And all the technology that we have now is pretty much still the technology from when he was there. It's pretty bad. It hasn't changed much. So it was groundbreaking technology at a Capitol at the time. It's not so much anymore. But you're talking on TV. I tell people all the time, the Louisiana legislature is the most transparent body in the United States, and people don't want to believe it. They think that that's not true because it's Louisiana. From the time that I'll walk in the door to the time that I leave, I'm on video, I'm being recorded, and it's all being archived on the internet in real time. And really, the person who is behind that was Hunt Downer. I said all that. I didn't even talk about him being a cabinet secretary, him being in U.S. Army Command, and all those kind of things. I think we all know about that stuff. It's amazing to me. I can barely juggle being a lawyer, a dad, and a state representative, and he was adding all those things to also being a reserve Army and just generally running the state from until he retired. So I can't say enough things about Hunt Downer. And finally, the last presenter is going to be Judge Jude Fungi. And it's hard to imagine a judge who's had a longer tenure in Terrebonne Parish that affected more lives than Judge Fungi. I have to pretty much guess that there's no city court judge in the history of Louisiana that has had the impact in the city court realm that Judge Jude Fungi has. I can't imagine there is somebody who has done more than that. That's why he is City Court Judge Emeritus. He is known for, in the legal community, writing long opinions from the city court bench, which is unusual, but the thought and time he put into rendering those opinions is something that is a stuff of legends. There was no way the First Circuit would ever overturn a Judge Fungi city court opinion because of how much time and research he actually put into them. He's taken that sort of level of research and in his retirement has decided to dedicate himself to telling the history of the judiciary of Louisiana. He is an avid researcher, and I can back this up. I'm not just saying it because it's on the sheet. I'm saying it because he calls me all the time and asks for stuff from the Louisiana legislature, different documents that only the Capitol has. I've done it probably on 2 or 3 occasions. I've gotten him the documents he wanted as he preps all of his research and studies. So he's not just sitting back in retirement. There's probably nobody in Louisiana, nobody in Terrebonne Parish, certainly, that knows more about the history of the judiciary, and we're very lucky. He is also married to Yvonne Fungi, his father and stepfather, 5 children, and 6 precious grandchildren, which I'd be remiss. Hunt Downer and his kids went to school with me as well, and he's very proud grandfather and dad as well. He's the only one I didn't talk about it, but I missed it in the thing because he's got so many accomplishments. With that said, I think we should give all of our presenters a standing ovation for all that they have done before they talk. All right, Reggie.
Thank you, Tanner. I want to, like Gordy said, welcome everybody here. And I mean, this is, I think, the best turnout of all of these functions on the bicentennial of Terrebonne Parish. So several months ago, Hunt Downer and I were voluntold we would go be in charge of the governing Terrebonne. So I called him up. I said, look, Hunt, a former speaker, a former senator, and a former speaker who is also a retired general, was used to delegating, we can't BS our way through this thing. We're going to have to get somebody that knows what they're doing, knows a little bit about looking up history. So he says, well, he nominated Judge Fungi. I said, that's a great choice. And then he says, but you got to pick somebody else. So I nominated and picked Laura Browning, who does a lot of the research and writing for Dr. Chris Sinak, one of our local historians here. So we soon, we started meeting. And one thing I realized, there was a little communication gap between the 4 of us. So you had a historian, a judge, and 2 politicians. And judges and historians want to deal in exact facts. I said, and we were having lunch a couple of weeks ago. I said, look, Laura was telling me something. I said, let me tell you something. I said, perception becomes reality in government and politics. So if Hunt says something, I say it will be real. I said, oh my God. But we got through it. And this is, I think, the biggest turnout thus far of all the Terrebonne 200 functions. And of course, this is a very, very important part of it is, our political history and how we got governed. I want to give special thanks before getting into the presentation, Parish President Dove and his staff, especially Debbie Lalani, GIS Engineering, O'Neill Marlborough, and especially Trey Middleton and Michael Cortez, who worked for him. All these posters you see here were done by Grand Isle Shipyard Engineering Division here in Houma. I mean, they took all the information we sent them, and up until, I think, 1 o'clock this morning, they were still printing posters. And then the staff of the Terrebonne Parish Council, Dr. Chris Sinak, Clifton Terrio, Nichols Library, Mary LaBeouf of the Terrebonne Parish Library, J.W. Wally, Assistant Secretary of the State Senate, who was my attorney when I was there, and Teresa Robichaud, Clerk of Court. Teresa allowed us yesterday to walk in the old courthouse with a ladder and retrieve some pictures. And I'm telling you, the cops at the front door didn't tell us anything. We just took them and walked out and didn't question us. So, and I also want to put a special thanks to my board president, Tony Alford, for allowing me to spend this much time on putting this together. So thank you, Mr. Alford. So now we get into the presentation. So we have a very rich history here. Our early settlers, but first, you had Native Americans. Terrebonne Parish before the 1700s, nobody lived here. This was a wilderness. So the first Native Americans started arriving in the 1700s and continued coming into the early 1800s from the Donaldsonville area. The first the first settlement of Native Americans in this area is in Whiskey Bayou. So Tony, don't dig in your backyard without a permit. Then the early French settlers started arriving in around 1765. And then, of course, we had, British, Germans, and Canadians coming here. Most of the French descendants down here arrived in 1785 on 7 ships that were chartered by the Spanish government to settle South Louisiana. Then, 1803, President Jefferson buys the Louisiana Territory, which became all the parts of 15 states. Most of the current state of Louisiana was the Orleans Territory, in the bottom of it, which is, where most of our state, including Terrebonne Parish. 1805, the territory of Orleans. This is the area you can see. The western Louisiana was not part of the territory of Orleans. Neither was the Florida parishes, or really Baton Rouge for that. So the Lafourche County down here, we were in Lafourche County before we became a state. Then in 1812, we became the 18th state to join the Union in the current day borders of Louisiana. Then the state is divided into several territories and parishes. There's a point if you can see it, we were in the Lafourche Interior Territory. So it's what is currently Terrebonne Parish, Lafourche Parish, Assumption, parts of St. Charles, and the eastern side of St. Mary Parish is what that area was. I learned a lot about doing this research on this parish. I must have passed by that sign in gray on Main Street 1,000 times in my lifetime. Never stopped to read it until last week when I took the picture of the sign. So our father and founding person in Terrebonne Parish is Henry Schuyler Thibodeau. Founder and father of Terrebonne Parish. He was born 1769 in Albany, New York. His parents were Acadian refugees who were exiled from Canada in 1755. He was orphaned after his mother died when he was an infant. He was adopted by General Philip Schuyler, who became a Revolutionary War hero. He was educated in Scotland. 1894, he moved to Louisiana in what is now St. James Parish. 1804, he settled along Bayou Terrebonne in the vicinity of where St. Bridget Church is. He named his plantation St. Bridget after his second wife. His first wife had passed away. 1812, when we became a state, he became a state senator elected from the Lafourche Interior Territory. He served in the state senate until 1827. In 1820, and he was president of the Senate for several years. In 1822, he sponsored the legislation, which is on one of these boards, the creating legislation that created Terrebonne Parish. And by the way, the original spelling of Terrebonne was 2 words, Terrebonne, with a capital B. Some kind of way it got put back in put as one name. 1824, he served for about 28 days as the 4th governor of Louisiana. He's the only person from Terrebonne to become governor. He was not elected, but he served as interim governor. I know we had somebody else that tried, but I'm sorry, Hunt, it didn't work out. So like I said, 1822, the legislation creating Terrebonne Parish was in March of 1822. A few weeks later, in April, the first police jury meeting was held in what is now Bayou Cane, somewhere in the vicinity of the Dodge dealerships, Outland Dodge, on the west or the east bank of descending bank of Bayou Terrebonne. First police juries were Francis Guile, the president and parish judge. Caleb Watkins was the first sheriff, who is the Watkins that are here. I saw Tom is here and Bubba's here. So that is you are a direct descendant of the first sheriff of Terrebonne Parish. And then you had other police jurors, Lefroy, Barras, Pierre Gautreau, spelled different than current Gautreau, John McHenry, Joseph Colette, and Joseph Boudreau. 1822, the first meeting was held in what is now Bayou Cane in the house owned by, I guess, one of my distant relatives, Alexander Dupre. And this was the first parish seat which became known around Bayou Cane as Williamsburg. So the first parish seat in Terrebonne was not Houma. It was Williamsburg, which was where on the park side of Bayou Cane. Then the first census of Terrebonne Parish, one of the boards right here in this next room has the first census of Terrebonne taken in 1830, first United States census. At the time, there were 2,121 people in Terrebonne Parish, 1,063 whites, 25 free blacks, and 1,033 slaves. Apparently, they didn't even count the Native Americans. I guess they were too afraid to go and face them or whatever. They wasn't even in the first census. If you see on the board, you will have all the head of households. So if you have a French name, or really there's some British names in there, if you have your last names in there, most likely your family, you're a descendant of an original family from Terrebonne. For example, Jean Dupre, I'm a seventh generation descendant of Jean Dupre, and his son Jean Montirin was his son also in that census. 1834, Hubert Blanger and Richard Greenwich, Hubert Blanger and Richard Greenwich donated a tract of land in what is now Houma, where the courthouse lays. The parish seat was moved to Houma, and that was the beginning of what is now the city of Houma. The first document starting Houma is on one of those boards, is a resolution from the police jury directing the building of a courthouse and a jail on that donated property. And then in 1848, Houma was incorporated as a town. The first mayor of Houma was N.H. Ryder. 1860, I think Judge Fonges will cover the courthouses. Another courthouse started but didn't get finished till 1875 due to the Civil Wars. Longest serving officials. So some of the longest serving officials, and we may have skipped some. Elwood Wright served as mayor of Houma from 1928 to 1945, and he was best friends, I understand, and partners with U.S. Senator Allen Ellender. Harry Walker Hellier, 1904 to 1945, and I think he was on the Houma Board of Aldermen, and I think his son-in-law was Morris Lottinger Sr. I don't know if I'm correct, but those a little older than me that's what I read in one of the Worslow books. Then you have Robert Boudreau, served as clerk of court for 48 years. I think he has the longest service of any of the same office. Hunt Donner, 28 years, state representative. Royal Pellegrin, who I knew he died when I was a teenager, served for 42 years on the police jury, starting in 1938 when he took his late father's place. He is the grandfather of every special service district, because he started the first fire district, the first recreation district, first road lighting district down in Montague and Pontchartrain, and he even had a garbage district down there. So special service districts, we're not going to cover too much of them, but that's another way that we govern this parish is through those special service districts, and they can either be a parish district or a state district like Terrebonne Levy District, where I'm the director, and Tony is the president of the board. By the way, I'm going to thank him. He convinced the state senator to resign this place to come back home. So it's been a good ride for all of us, Tony. Thank you. First, then we have some first. The first African-American elected official is not on this board. It's Amos Sims, sheriff in 1872. Then Mayor Joseph Dupart of Houma, 1873. Percy Gabriel and Willie Bonvillain were the first police jurors, African-American police jurors elected, I think in the 1979 election. Alvin Tillman, I think he was here. He was the first parish council chairman when he served. I think that was around 2007. First elected women, Terrebonne Parish. Lorraine Kimball was the first parish council member. Of course, Judge Whipple, the first female judge, not only and first, obviously, to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. Lenora Whitney, the first female state representative. Teresa Robichaud, the first female clerk of court. So we made a big change in the way we did ourselves, and I want y'all to understand, we have the most unique local government in the country right here. We take that for granted because we face it every day. But, you know, a police jury is the general government in the state constitution that the legislature grants the parishes to govern themselves. But in the 1974 Constitution, granted more authority to the people of individual parishes to govern themselves on home rule provisions. So back in the 70s, home of Terrebonne was growing like mad. Our economy was growing, oil and gas was booming, our population was booming. So a lot of business leaders, and especially led by the mayor at the time, Mr. Lines, saw we need to maybe look at doing something different here in Terrebonne Parish. So they convinced, I believe, Senator Claude Duval from here in Home, and there's also, they talked about the Ellender Room, there's a Duval Hall, is where most of the committee rooms are in the Senate side. He passed legislation in '79 creating the Charter Commission, Terrebonne Parish Charter Commission. Then the police jury and city government created the commission. They met for 2 years, and the chairman has passed away, which was Mr. Ken Watkins, but the vice chairman is here tonight from the Charter Commission. Judge Stanwood Duval served as vice chairman of that commission on the government we now have. 1981, they worked for 2 years on putting this charter together. It went to the voters, and it passed on a Saturday with an 8% voter turnout, and there's 2 issues that had to pass, not one. 8% on a rainy Saturday, and it passed. And we have the most unique local government, I think, in the country, and it just barely passed. So the 2 issues that the voters approved was, number one, whether we was going to have a home rule charter replacing the police jury with a parish president and a council, much like Lafourche has. But the second issue is whether we were going to abolish the city government and consolidate everything under that parish president and city council. Both issues passed, and then in the '83 election, the first election for parish president and for the new council, that's when it went into effect. So the last deal I'm going to bring up, so we each honoring a couple of people was in our talks, and I did Henry Thibodeau already, but I'm going to end by honoring Edward Bubby Lines. He served as a police juror from, I think, 68 to 76, actually, because the last 4 years, his last term, he was president of the jury. He was still a juror. Then he served, 1972 was the sesquicentennial for Terrebonne Parish, and he signed the resolution for the sesquicentennial recognizing it. And he was the last mayor of Houma. He served from 1978 to 84 as the last mayor of Houma. The first parish president of Terrebonne from 84 to 88. And I often wonder why Bubba didn't run for re-election. I think that's when he ran for Public Service Commission. I'm not sure. And that he lost to Kathleen Blanco, who eventually became lieutenant governor, then governor. But I want you to understand the time frame when Bubby was parish president. This is in the worst economic times that this region has seen since the Great Depression. We had unemployment approaching 25%. I mean, they had bumper stickers. If you'd have asked to leave home or turn off the lights. They had to lay off a lot of parish employees. Bubba did. He had to cut everybody's pay. But we thought that this is because of our boom is why we created this new form of government, but it was our salvation in the worst economic times. Because I don't know if the police jury and the city government would have survived. But Bubba's the one that held us together, and he almost suffered bankruptcy personally because of the times. You know, he wanted to be a full-time president, and then even his businesses were suffering. So he's given a lot to this area. Then after he goes to retire, he moves to the North Shore to be some of his children and grandchildren, and in 2009 he becomes the interim mayor of Mandeville. No one else in this state has become a mayor of 2 separate towns. That's why he's in the Political Hall of Fame. He's a native of Little Caillou. He was married 63 years to John Article Lyons, and father of 5, 13 grandchildren, and Gordy has named the descendants that we invited here tonight of Mr. Lyons. So we thank you for your grandfather's sacrifice he's given to this parish. He was a true gentleman, and I will end by saying this. This is some of his background. And I have never erased his contacts in my phone. So right before, 2 weeks before he passed, I got a phone call. And it said, Bubby Lyons. I said, well, I ain't talked to Bubby Lyons in a couple of years. So we said our hellos. And he told me, he says, Reggie, he says, before I die, I'm calling you to thank you for your public service. So till the very end, that man was a gentleman. And I heard that was not the only call he made. I think there's some other people in this room that got that same phone call. So I was very, very honored to get that. And when he passed 2 weeks later, I mean, that was mind-boggling.
You know, when I got roped into this, where do you start? History. And I'd like to say first, we learn from history. And every one of us in this room have had the same history lesson that we learned from. No matter who we are, where we're from, as youngsters, we began learning from history. In my case, it was my grandmother telling me, boy, don't touch that stove, it's hot. Now, you know what? I'll be the first to admit, and one of my former professors are here, I was a slow learner. It took me 3 times to touch it to find out how hot it was, but I didn't touch it again. Part of this, as we got into it, became monumental. You don't know where to stop. But you have to know where you've been to know where you are, to know where you're going. We all know where we are today. So we're going to take you back to where we've been. And when we started this, I was tasked with just doing the legislature, but particularly the fact that we had, at that time, what we knew, 3 speakers of the House. First one, Allen Ellender, later Senator Ellender. Second one was Morris Lottinger, later Chief Judge Lottinger, and then myself. But when we got into it, and I started looking, found out we had a speaker from Terrebonne Parish in 1865. He served for 2 years, 18 as speaker, almost 3. From 1865 to 1867. He was, and at that time, they met in New Orleans. And what got interesting, I started, believe it or not, I accept the praises for putting technology, Mr. Speaker, putting technology you still have into the House. The problem with it was I didn't know how to use it, and I still don't. I'll admit it. I had to go over to the technology guru who has a degree in it because something came up on my cell phone. I didn't know how to get it off. And the only thing that saves people like myself and Reggie and the judge due to age is the fact that when we were 18, the only pictures of us that exist are Polaroid, and we can deny that's us because they're so faded. When we get to technology, and I see the speaker and Speaker Pro Tem Tanner laughing in the corner, they got to worry about iPhones. We don't. when you think of knowing where you've been, we found out in checking that there was actually the first speaker was in, believe it or not, 1865. I did a little more research, and I'm going to put the speaker on the spot in a minute, and I checked and found back then all of the sessions, they didn't follow any Robert's Rules of Order. It was strictly you introduced a resolution, and it had to be a joint resolution. Anything dealing with money, generally, still does, originates in the House. Resolution number 1 of the 1865 session in New Orleans was to appropriate the money for the legislature, $100,000. My first session, 1996, as Speaker, was right at $39 million. What is it now, Mr. Speaker? Right at $80 million. Now, when you go back, got to know where you've been, to know where you are, to know where you're going. This isn't rocket science. We were at 100,000, then 39 million, and now 80 million. We know where we're going, up. But the interesting thing is, when they were, at that time, we found out the speaker was strictly responsible for the session, the nuts and bolts of running a session. Now, you're responsible for the entire Capitol complex, the buildings, the Pentagon buildings, the Law Institute. I could go on and on and on. In fact, there are so many things under there, it's hard to get a hold of it. Well, we started looking back, and on the boards on the side, we have every legislator that was a member of the House of Representatives from 1812 to the present day. And let me tell you, go by and read it. It's really interesting. And then we did it for the Senate, but we can only go back. They had not yet completed the research beyond, I think it was 1880, all of the legislators from Terrebonne who were state senators. What's interesting in all of that is that people came from Terrebonne. Reggie touched on it. Terrebonne was part of the county of Orleans. We were not parishes until, actually formally, until the Constitution passed, and I think it was 1860 or 1880. So back then, they split. Terrebonne and Lafourche. Terrebonne came out of Lafourche, and we were able to trace it back. The challenge, writing, French, and English, was trying to translate all of that. As we move forward, the interesting part, and it's shown in here, and we have the Ellender family who is with us, we have Morris Lottinger who's with us, were the people who were speaker. To the best of our knowledge, we tried to find relatives and descendants of Speaker Duncan Cage, obviously 1865 to 67. Names change, records. The most we could find is that most of his family at some time in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they moved to New Orleans. But Cage lived where the present day, for those of you who are from here, present day Sire Motor Freight offices are on the corner of Grand Collier Road and Woodlawn Ranch Road. His home was called Woodlawn. And for those of you who drive sometimes to Baton Rouge on Highway 308 in Napoleonville, Maidwood Plantation was copied from Woodlawn, which burned down sometimes in the 1960s, I'm told. It had become abandoned and it burned. And his family donated a lot of that land to the parish. They owned, I think, right at 1,000 acres of farmland. His father had been a congressman in Tennessee. They left Tennessee, moved to Mississippi where he was born, and he moved down to Terrebonne Parish. So again, the history as you walk back to find out where you've been. Next, of prominence, Senator Allen Ellender. who started in the legislature, well, first, who had an interesting political career. I want to say right out of law school, he ran for district attorney, was unsuccessful, but that did not quell his passion for politics. 1924, elected to the House of Representatives. At that time, the House of Representatives met in what's now called the old state capitol. The new state capitol wasn't dedicated until the 30s, 32. Allen Ellender served as Speaker of the House from 1932 to 1936. Then Morris Lottinger Sr., Judge Lottinger, who's here tonight's father, picked up when Ellender left the House of Representatives in 1936 and was elected to the U.S. Senate. He was replaced by then Morris Lottinger Sr., who remained in the House of Representatives until 1948 when he was elected Speaker of the House. Because at that time, interestingly enough, Allen Ellender was Speaker of the House under, it started out, the late Governor Huey Long, then followed by Governor O.K. Allen. So Allen Ellender was technically the Speaker under Governor O.K. Allen. Morris Lottinger's father, or Judge Lottinger, was the Speaker, and at that time, the governor was Huey Long's younger brother, Earl Long. So if you see the pattern of where we've been, there were those relationships that were established much of the time in the legislature. Allen Ellender was named Suzu, born on a potato farm down the bayou, and that says something for Louisiana. Notice where the folks come from, where they've matriculated from, where you've been, down the bayou. He served in the legislature, Speaker. We're going to touch on one or two of the pictures, if I remember where they were when we get there, but here they are. That was his house. That was his college where he went to school. And just think, at age 19, he graduated from college, law school, at age 23, and ran for district attorney. Here's some other things. District attorney candidate, 1915 to 1916. And yes, let's say World War I. We don't even think of that. When he was in school, they were training everybody, all able-bodied young men, for the war. He was a partner in a law firm here, and of course, here's his district attorney race. To the right of the screen, you will see his, what they call push card, when he ran for senator, and the outcome, 1,200 votes to 600. Now, that was the total vote. We don't know the percentage of turnout because they didn't have voting machines. And then he did serve as an interim district attorney because he got a job with the district attorney's office and then wanted to run for district attorney. And moving on with Allen Ellender's tribute, he did more for everything because he was from here. He was a man of the people. He had a personality. He was a fighter. We'd call him a scrapper. Wasn't always diplomatic in the politics, in the political arena. His secrets were responsible for success in winning the Potato King. He made connections. And for those who remember the stories, when he was in Washington, he cooked, had a cookbook, a recipe book he circulated, and he cooked for the president and all the members of the cabinet out of the closet in his office. Now, this picture, I want you to focus on it. And then we'll talk some more about Ellender. This picture is Senator Ellender sitting cocked back in the light-colored suit. Next to him is Governor Huey Long. This is the Speaker's dais in the Capitol. As Speaker Sheikh Snyder knows, it was taken 1 hour before Huey Long was shot. In what is today's Speaker's office was at that time the governor's office. Huey Long was meeting, he was the U.S. Senator. He was meeting with the Speaker of the House, Representative Speaker Alan Ellender. They had the conversation. Senator Ellender got up, walked over to that marble wall, walked down that side into the hall, and was walking to what was then the governor's office to go down the stair to the waiting car. Part of what's not in the history, only because I found out about it in the 70s, and as a young legislator didn't write it all down. A gentleman from Houma named Bill Fake was the state trooper who was assigned as his bodyguard, who actually caught him in his hands and rode him in the back seat of the car to the hospital after he had been shot. He walked down that hall. There's some marble columns right outside the speaker's, what is now the speaker's office, which was then the governor's office. Gentleman stepped out from behind it and fired shots. Bodyguards opened up and bullets did fly. And that's because it's marble. Speaker Shakespeare, Speaker McGee can tell you, if you ever take a tour to the Capitol, you can still see the bullet holes, and they've got them marked with a plaque, so to call your attention. That's why this picture is so significant. Terrebonne did well because of that relationship. That governor, that U.S. senator, took care of Terrebonne. And when Ellender moves to the U.S. Senate, he developed that same rapport. See, he started out as not an opponent, but opposite of Huey Long as governor in philosophy. But they learned to respect each other. And once that respect came, it developed into his power, political power, ability to get things done. Same worked in the U.S. Senate, and what he did and accomplished, too much to go into. And he served in the Senate until, unfortunately, he died in 1972 for his reelection, during his reelection. And I say, and during his campaign, he died on July 27th. His funeral was attended. The President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the leading political figures at that time came to Houma, Louisiana. I mean, you talk about stimulate the economy. They had more guns and police and Secret Service. And that's the inside of St. Francis where the funeral was held. Out here, if you'll notice in the upper right, that's the hangar where at that time it would have been called Army One before the Marines took over the helicopters. Army One was going to fly the president to New Orleans to catch an airplane. It says foreign off. That was the old foreign off airplane hangar. So that gives you an idea of the history that Terrebonne Parish has. And we move forward as we go into, then came, as I said, 1936, Senator Ellender then goes on to the U.S. Senate. A young aspiring politico named Morris Lottinger Sr. is elected to the House of Representatives. In 1948, Morris Lottinger Sr. ascends or is elected Speaker of the House under Governor Earl Long, Huey's brother. Now, what's interesting there, judges back then, vacancies on a court were appointed by the governor. That got changed in the 1975 Constitution, but they were appointed. Who would Earl Long appoint if there was a vacancy on the Court of Appeals? His speaker. So Morris Lottinger Sr. was appointed to judge on the First Circuit Court of Appeal. Now, what's interesting, when Morris Lottinger Sr. passed away in 1975, then Governor Edwin Edwards appointed Morris Lottinger Jr. to fill his father's place. A legacy and a continuance of service from a family, dedication and commitment to public service. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll wrap it up. We have a speaker and a speaker pro tem here, and I want to thank them things haven't changed. And I can tell you, Tanner McGee, thank you for the accolades, but all seriousness aside, a couple things I'd like to capture. Not only is Louisiana the most open for school teachers who are present, you can tune in when they're on session, you can go to an LBP, Louisiana Public, LPB. Well, I wasn't good in English, even though my English teacher's sitting here, right, Mr. Roy? Sir? I wasn't that good. But you can go there and watch, and then simultaneously tune in on a computer or whatever they call those things, and monitor the bill. You can call it up and see the hard copy or the electronic copy and actually watch the debate. And if you're not satisfied and you want to go back, you can rerun it later because it is archived. We're keeping history going, and I want to compliment those two for what they're doing. In the spite, because everyone competes for dollars, and they always say, you're just spending money on yourself. I see Judge Mitch Terrio here, who's a former legislator and colleague of ours, sat in the back next to Reggie, I believe, huh? It was bad when I saw Lafourche and Terrebonne representatives sitting together and talking, and I'm the speaker. You know it's going to cost you money. So I want to thank you for taking your time coming here, and we tried to run through it. History is not that exciting at times till you get into it. Judge Weimer is sitting there mighty quiet, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say I knew Judge Weimer when he had long hair and rode a motorcycle and was the legislative assistant to then Representative Billy Tozan, who was my roommate. So I want to thank you for the beers you would get us at night, Your Honor. I didn't realize that both you and I would be members of the bar on this side of the bar. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here to speak about one of my favorite subjects, one in which I was blessed to serve, the judiciary. You're going to have to bear with me because, whoops. Okay. This is a new slide. I'm familiar with all the material. We begin with the courthouse. Terrebonne Parish has had 6 courthouses plus the annex. The first, as was said before, was near Cane, 1822. They built the courthouse. They built the jail next to it, 12 by 12. And what was interesting was they paid $17 for someone to build some stocks. That was really interesting. I had thought sometimes when juveniles came to court that maybe I'd put some stocks in front of city court and they might behave. But I know what was acceptable back in 1822 is not appropriate now. When they moved to Homer, what became Homer, they built the courthouse. And 2 years later, they built a larger one. And the sketch that you have there is actually of the 4th courthouse. In 1860, they began constructing it. The war came in, and that stopped the construction. And they didn't finish it until 1875. That's a sketch. E.C. Worslow was a deputy clerk of court, and he made that sketch. That stayed our courthouse until 1892. And Big Ben was built in. A lot of people remember that. They called Big Ben because they had a bell, and also they had 4 clocks, one facing each direction. And I was told that it rang specially to remind the lawyers to come to court on time. That remained our courthouse until 1937. It was tore down, and then they began the construction of the current courthouse, which was built by WPA and completed in 1938. And like I said, they built the annex, I think it was 1972, 75, they built a little bridge connecting them. Terrebonne has been a part of a total of 9 judicial districts. We're the only parish now in the 32nd, but over the years, we started out in the 2nd with St. James, Ascension, Assumption, Lafourche, and Terrebonne. In fact, our first judge, Benjamin Winchester, was from St. James. Court in Terrebonne Parish in 1822 was held on the first Monday of June and the first Monday of December. I'm sure if they had some cases and they had to spend another day or two of it, they did. But it was interesting when you realize that that was the schedule. We became part of the 5th, and that was Assumption, Lafourche, and Terrebonne. Later, Lafourche, St. Martin, St. Mary, Terrebonne, and later Iberia. Of course, Iberia at that time was part of what was St. Martin. St. Martin and St. Mary. Later, in 1871, Assumption, Lafourche, and Terrebonne. 1879, it was St. Mary and Terrebonne. 18th district was 1890. There was Lafourche and Terrebonne. Then the 20th, Lafourche and Terrebonne. The 17th, Lafourche and Terrebonne. And in 1974, we became the 32nd Judicial District. We had 3 judges at that time. Now we have a total of 5. I wanted to talk especially about Judge Butler. I knew Judge Butler. When I delivered newspapers for the state item, he was one of my clients or one of my customers. He lived on Gabash Street, corner of Verret. Most of the time, his wife was the one that paid me, not him. But here, actually, he was born in East Baton Rouge Parish, ended up in St. Mary Parish. He was a principal. And back then, you could study law under an attorney. You didn't have to go to law school. And when you thought you knew enough of the law, wanted to take the test, you could take the test. He did, passed it in 1898, got married in the same year, and moved to Terrebonne Parish. He practiced law with Mr. Worslow. He was a charter member of Unity Lodge, Free and Accepted Masons, co-publisher with Mr. Duval, I think it was. And it was interesting because I read some articles of his announcements. He had a very unique way of expressing himself. And it was really interesting where he always expressed appreciation of the respect of the people who served him and electing him. He helped to establish a program in Terrebonne Parish. Politically, he had a very interesting career. He served as state representative 3 terms. He was elected a delegate to the Constitution Convention in 1913. He was elected the first vice president by acclamation. He served as a state senator after that, and then got elected and served from 1924 until 1942. He was followed by Judge Watkins, who was he was born on Waterproof, lived in Houma, began practicing law with Judge Butler in 1920. Elected to the school board, was elected in '66. What was very impressive, though, was besides his political career, was all of the civic activities he was engaged in. Supported high school athletics. He was an official game announcer, and he was also president of the Rotary Club, the Elks Chamber of Commerce, Red Cross, LA in the National Conference of Christians and Jews. He was the chairman, the local chairman for many years with that. He was very active at St. Francis de Sales. I remember when I was an altar boy in the early 1950s, and he broadcast the church service over KCIL, and if I served at 9 o'clock a Mass, I could see him in the alcove over there. He was in the 4th degree Knights of Columbus, and he also was with the Adrian Kaiwet 4th degrees. We had 25 of the 44 judges who have served in Terrebonne Parish from Terrebonne, and this is most of them. Judge Greenberg was also one of my clients. I delivered newspapers to him. Miss Alice was a very sweet person, his wife. Judge Baron Berg. If there was a judge in Terrebonne Parish history who was a stand-up comic, it was Judge Berg. We could tell stories about it. But there was one thing that I was never able to resolve. I never learned the story as to whether or not he was the publisher, co-publisher, or the recipient of a bestseller. It was called All I Know About the Law. It contained about 225 blank pages. I'm told that Aunt Downer might know something about that story. Judge Marcel was a mentor of mine during college. I would visit in his home often. His son CJ and I were in school together. We were going to the seminary together. And when I got out of law school, he was the only person who offered me a job, so I took it. He served many years. Judge Pettigrew served after Judge Greenberg had died, and served on a bench with distinction. Judge Broussard, turn him loose Bruce, they used to call him. And that is interesting because before he became a judge, he served 2 terms as district attorney for the 17th District Court. Judge, well, let's see, that's wrong. That's Paul Wimbish. He was appointed to the, they had created a 5th judgeship, and he ran and got elected and served until his retirement. Then Judge the Senior, Judge Tim Ellen the Senior, I told him after a couple of years that he was the best thing ever happened to me. And he said, "What you meant by that?" And I said, "Well, when I first got elected, sometimes they would talk about that fungi dude, you know, and all that. And I told him, I said, after you got elected, they don't talk about me no more." Judge Jimmy Gadry, who happens to be my 3rd cousin, sometimes he don't admit that, served and then got elected to the First Circuit Court of Appeals and served there for 10 years. John Pettigrew got elected in 91, served about 8 years until he also got elected to the First Circuit. Something must be happening up there, I don't know. Johnny Walker got elected after Judge Berg had died. And during his tenure as judge in his service, besides the responsibilities that he had as a judge, he also handled the drug court. And drug court is a marvelous program, and he handled that real well, served real well on that. Judge Lark was elected, and I think he was elected after Jimmy Gadry went to the First Circuit, and then he served until his recent retirement. Judge David Arsenault I think was elected after Pettigrew went to the First Circuit. He's currently serving on the bench. He is the senior judge in terms of service, and he recently started handling. They created a new court, the family preservation of family court, try to keep families together, and he's serving on that. Judge Bethencourt was elected in 2003 and is currently serving. I think he's in the I think he's in his fourth term. Judge Pickett was unopposed, first African-American, served after Judge Allen the Senior, and is in the middle of the second year of second term. First, and our new judges on the court, Judge DeGate and Tim Allen Jr. I wish them well. Parish courts. Most people aren't aware of the fact that at one time there were parish courts, 1813 to 1845, then they were discontinued, and they restarted in 1868 and until 1879. There were a limited jurisdiction court, which meant like for civil cases, you could only handle a case or file a lawsuit if it was like $300 or less. They had no criminal jurisdiction. Back then, we didn't have a clerk of court as such. And so they were the custodians of the parish records, all the acts of sales, mortgages, etc. They also acted as ex officio notaries. And during approximately first 20 years of our parish existence, they handled most of the acts of sales. There wasn't any notaries back then. Even cop notaries, like Mr. Dawson used to call them. They were ex officio probate judges, recorded births and deaths. It was very interesting. I saw some of those. If you had a child that was born, you go see him, sign an affidavit. Your wife or family member died, you go see the judge, and they documented that. And also, strangely, cattle brand registrations. Dr. Sinak, in one of his books, talks a lot about the cattle brand. City court. City court came into existence after the census of 1910. There was a law, the Larson Act, which said that if there's a ward that has a municipality in it, and the population in a municipality becomes 5,000 people, then the justice of the peace becomes a city judge. And the census in 1910 showed that Houma had a population of 5,024 people. So that kicked in the law. In the next election, which was in 1912, Judge Akins was elected. That was the first time. He was reelected later on, but he was the first city court judge. Judge Charles Celestine then got elected. He had served as the Terrebonne Parish clerk of court before getting elected. Unfortunately, he died. His son, C.A., or Charles Celestine Jr., who was a doctor, he was a dentist, he was appointed and finished the term. Then Charles Berg got elected, and he served, I think, 5 terms. Then Edwin Edwards was appointed, got elected again. He died in office. And so Eugene Rucci was appointed. Mr. Rucci was described as being the head bookkeeper at Haydell's drugstore. He he served. And what was interesting, when he came up for re-election, he had talked about his experience with juveniles. And historically, I've been trying to figure out what was happening to merit that. I don't know if it was a juvenile crime wave, or a lot of them were riding their bicycles on the sidewalk, or I don't know. I don't know what it was, but he emphasized that. He was opposed by Mr. Berg, opposed him, and also a young lawyer. The young lawyer was 29 years at the time old. He had been practicing law for 6 years. He ran on a platform that he thought that the judge of city court should be a lawyer. Well, the voters agreed. He won in a runoff with Judge Rucci. He served for 36 years. He was, when I got elected, he left city court in good order. It was financially solvent. We had a lot of money in the bank. I remember Peggy Swan was his longtime clerk, said he was very frugal, and I found out that was true, because after I got sworn in, the next day, he took me around the banks to sign the documents. Well, we rode to the bank in a Beetle Volkswagen that didn't have an air conditioner. I got elected in '78, served 30 years, and then Judge Matt Hagan got elected in 2014, and is now in the middle of the second year of his second term. He's doing a real good job. Justice of the Peace Corps. We've had them from day one. And in fact, when the Louisiana Purchase and the government that was set up for that, you had Justice of the Peace. You had Louisiana, and in the beginning, each ward has one. They're not a court of record. It would be almost impossible to find out who they were. Although, interestingly, in the minutes of the first police jury meeting, April 6, 1822, they had the names of 4 of them: Williams S. Watkins, Charles Dupre, George Toops, and Leander B. Thibodeau, who I think was one of the sons of Henry, or what have you. I thought it would be appropriate that, although they didn't serve in Terrebonne Parish, to recognize judges, First Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Morris Lottinger Sr., after he had served in the legislature, was elected to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. He was the presiding judge during the last 9 years of his service. When he retired, his son Morris, who at the time was serving as a state representative, ran for and got elected. And during the last 6 years of his term, he also served as the chief judge. J. Lewis Watkins Jr. Was elected. Before he got elected, I think he served on the BC board, and I think at one time he might have been the president of that. He unfortunately died in 1997. I've already mentioned John Pettigrew, who got elected and served, Judge Jimmy Gaisry, and Chief Judge Vanessa Whipple. I was glad you could make it. I was told by your staff that you were going to be very busy, so I appreciate you coming here. Then we had some judges from Terrebonne who served with distinction on the Eastern District of the federal court. Judge Adrian Kywet served from 1940 to 1946 when he died. He was recognized as an authority on both the Louisiana civil law and admiralty and marine law. Judge Arsenault, who served from 79 to 93, he was an administrative assistant to Senator Allen Ellender before he came to Homer in 1960 to practice law. And he practiced law with Duval, Arsenault, and Lewis until he got appointed. And not last but not least, and I appreciate you being here, Stanwood, he served with distinction on that. And as was mentioned before, when he was practicing law, he served as an assistant city attorney. He served as a parish attorney. He was a delegate to the 1974 Louisiana Constitutional Convention. He was also with the Charter Commission. He recently retired, but as I understand it, he's not going to be rocking a chair or drinking mint juleps. He and his wife have begun arbitration and mediation service. So I appreciate y'all. That's it. Appreciate y'all kind attention.
Since there's no closing program, aren't you glad? Wanted to just give you a little background and history on the judges. Could you call up, well, you heard Judge Fungi talk about the origination of city court. This is the politics behind that. You had to have a population of 5,000 to be a judge for the City of Homer City Court. Am I not correct, Your Honor? Well, you know, when they start doing that, well, it's coming. You notice that the occupation, he didn't tell you, the occupation of the first elected judge, first, 5,000. What was the count? 5,024 people. Doesn't that get a little suspicious? But when you find out that that judge happened to be in the census counter, makes sense, doesn't it? We want to thank y'all for coming out and enjoying some of the history with us. Thank y'all. And thank those of you who served.